Hey, God's chosen one. You're not here by chance. It wasn't a random click. It wasn't a simple swipe. There's a decree from heaven that moved toward you, and that's why this message found you. The Spirit whispers in my heart that this is the moment your life will be realigned. You may even feel like you've arrived here out of curiosity, but in truth, you've been led. Eternity has its ways, and one of them is to place before us words that become keys. This is a key, and it doesn't open ordinary doors. It opens stories. Because the truth is this: your story didn't end where you thought it did. The chapters of pain, the paragraphs of rejection, the pages wet with tears weren't the final point. They were just commas. They were necessary pauses so the author of authors could pick up the pen again and rewrite what seemed lost. Have you ever felt like your life was marked by labels you didn't choose? Have you ever noticed how external voices tried to tell you who you were, what you deserved, and how far you could go? These voices were loud, insistent, constant. They told you you wouldn't be enough, that you wouldn't have what you dreamed of, that your life was already sealed in failure. But listen, heaven doesn't confirm human narratives. Heaven writes with its own ink, and when God writes, not even hell can erase. Perhaps you're watching this carrying a weight. The weight of "it didn't work out." The weight of "I failed." The weight of "no one believes in me." But what you need to understand is that the final words about your life never belong to people. They belong to God. And if He's saying now that He's going to rewrite your story, it means the next chapters won't have the same flavor as the previous ones. Look with me. Every story of transformation in Scripture began at a breaking point. Joseph, rejected by his brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, forgotten in a prison. The human narrative said, "It's over. There's no future." But heaven's narrative said, "This is just the beginning." Moses, a fugitive, exiled in the desert, considered unable to speak. Heaven found him and said, "You will be a voice of liberation." David, forgotten by his own father, ignored when all his sons were presented to Samuel. But heaven rewrote, "This is the king I have chosen." In the same way, your story also faces a turning point. You are not at an end. You are at a pause. And this pause is prophetic. The Spirit is showing me that many who hear these words feel like they have lived through pages of humiliation. You have been sidelined, ignored, compared, diminished. And this has created in you the feeling that life has written a book you never wanted to read. But listen, God doesn't just read your story. He edits. He corrects. He changes the course. He tears out entire pages that are no longer useful and writes others with indelible ink of promise and hope. And do you know what is most powerful? Heaven never loses the thread of the narrative. What seemed incoherent, meaningless, and disconnected to you is actually part of a larger plot. You simply read the wrong chapter and concluded the book was bad. But the author never lost control. Now, a revelation needs to enter your spirit. You did not fail. You were prepared. You did not waste time. You were trained in silence. You were not forgotten. You were hidden to be revealed at the right time. The pen is already in God's hand, and He is now writing a new phase for you, a phase in which scenarios change, in which doors open, in which the characters on your journey change too. New people will come, divine alignments will form, unexpected invitations will appear. Because when heaven decides to rewrite, it is not just a correction, it is a revolution. You will feel within you that something has been released. A new breath, a hope that seemed lost. This is the signature of the Spirit. And when you look back, you will see that the tears that watered the soil of your pain were, in fact, the invisible ink with which God was already preparing your victory. So, receive this word as a prophetic opening. The chapter that begins now is not the result of chance. It is the fruit of an eternal decree. Your story is being rewritten, and the title of this new phase is Redemption. Affirm this in your spirit now. My story is not over. Heaven is writing again, and nothing can erase what God has already decreed for me. You know all too well the feeling of carrying a weight no one sees. Sometimes this weight isn't physical. It's not a suitcase on your shoulders. It's an invisible burden, but one that weighs down your soul. This weight has a name: rejection. Rejection is when the world tries to write a story about you that was never yours. It's when someone looks you in the eye and says, in words or in silence, "You're not enough." It's when doors close, not because you didn't try, but because others decided you weren't worthy of entering. It's when you're forgotten in the corner, ignored in the crowd, replaced without even being noticed. These experiences leave their mark, and if you don't realize it, these marks begin to dictate the narrative of your life. You begin to believe that maybe you really aren't good enough. You begin to convince yourself that maybe you weren't born for great things. And, little by little, the echo of rejection transforms into an inner voice that repeats, "Don't try, you will fail. Don't dream, you will be frustrated. Don't expose yourself, you will be ridiculed." But listen to this. Heaven never authorized these voices to be the writers of your story. The words you heard were human words. The wounds you bore were temporary impressions. But God's ink is eternal, and He is now firmly erasing all the sentences they placed upon you. Yes, you were rejected, but the rejection was not the last word. Yes, you were forgotten, but the oblivion was not definitive. Yes, you were diminished, but the diminishment did not nullify the calling that was already written in heaven before you were even born. Look at Joseph once more. When his brothers rejected him, throwing him into a pit, they thought they were writing his end. But God was only beginning a story that would end on the throne. Look at David. When his father left him in the field, the family believed he was just another ordinary shepherd. But heaven had already decreed, king. Look at Jesus. Rejected by his own, crucified among thieves, considered unworthy even by religious leaders. But this rejection was the gateway to the redemption of all humanity. Do you see? Rejection is not a permanent label. It is merely the backdrop that makes the turnaround God is preparing even brighter. The tears you cried in silence were not in vain. Each one is remembered by heaven. The silence of closed doors was not forgetfulness. It was protection. The absence of applause was not dishonor. It was alignment. And here is the revelation. Every rejection you faced did not diminish your worth. It multiplied your preparation. You were not set aside to be forgotten. You were set apart to be preserved. Perhaps you still feel the scars of these experiences within you. Perhaps the voice of rejection still tries to rise up when you dream. But today, I declare, that voice is being silenced. The pen has returned to the author's hand. He is cutting out these sentences and writing new sentences about you. And what he writes is different. He writes accepted. He writes loved. He writes chosen. He writes prepared. You are not the label they placed on you. You are not the wrong they committed against you. You are not the absence you felt. You are what heaven decreed. And from today on, I want you to affirm this within yourself. My story is not written by human hands. My story is in God's hands, and He has already decided that I am loved, accepted, and raised to something greater. This is the mark that will now be etched in your life. No longer that of rejection, but that of election. Have you ever walked through a season where everything seemed too quiet? Where your prayers echoed as if hitting a bronze ceiling? Where you looked to the heavens and saw only silence? God's silence is one of the most painful terrains the soul can traverse. Because you pray, you seek, you cry out, but you hear no answer. You wait for a sign, a touch, a word, but everything seems empty. And in this emptiness, the mind begins to cry out, has God forgotten me? Have I lost my way? Am I not worthy? This silence, however, is not absence. This silence is presence on another frequency. God is not silent because he has abandoned you. He is silent because he is building. And the greatest constructions happen underground, hidden from view, hidden. Think of a seed. When it is planted, what happens? It disappears. It is buried. It becomes invisible. And those looking from the outside might think, it's over, there's nothing left there. But in reality, it is in the silence of the earth that life is germinating. It is in the darkness that roots form. It is in the hidden that inner strength is established. The same happens with you. God's silence was the soil where he was rooting you. You thought you were forgotten, but you were being prepared. You thought you were lost, but you were being hidden for the right time. And if you look back at your journey, you will realize that this silence was not empty. It was full of lessons. It was full of small directions that, even without realizing it, brought you here. Heaven never lost control. Abraham faced this silence for years, waiting for the promise of a son. Joseph faced this silence for long periods of unjust imprisonment. Hannah wept for years before the temple, hearing nothing in response. But in all these cases, the silence ended in an abundant response, an unexpected turnaround, a resounding victory. You're in this pattern too. The silence wasn't an endpoint. It was a dramatic pause in the plot of your story. And now that pause is about to be broken. You need to receive this revelation. When God seems silent, he is writing. And when he decides to speak again, it's not with a short sentence. It's with entire chapters of transformation. What seemed like delay will reveal itself as preparation. What seemed like forgetfulness will reveal itself as alignment. What seemed like rejection will reveal itself as promotion. This silence was the greatest testimony to how much God trusted you, because he knew that even without hearing anything, you would remain steadfast. Even without visible signs, you would continue to believe. Even without immediate answers, you wouldn't give up on your faith. And this kind of faithfulness is rare. It's precious. It's exactly what makes heaven move in your favor now. So, take a deep breath. Don't confuse silence with absence. Don't confuse delay with forgetfulness. Don't confuse stillness with rejection. God was present in every tear you cried. He was present every night you felt alone. He was present in every silent decision you made to keep believing. And now, he rises to break the silence, to turn the page, to rewrite your story out loud, in a way that even those who doubted will need to recognize. Only God could have done this. Affirm this within yourself. My silence was not empty. It was fertile soil. And now, heaven will speak again and rewrite my story before everyone. You've looked back so many times and thought, why did it take so long? Why doesn't it seem like my life is moving at the same pace as others? But heaven tells me, it wasn't a delay, it was preparation. What seemed like a detour was actually the exact path God had laid out to silently shape you. The hidden preparation always happens off stage, behind the curtains, backstage where no one applauds. While others sought applause and visibility, you were being shaped in anonymity. While many sought recognition, you were taught to endure silence, to embrace solitude, and to learn to walk with God even when nothing seemed to be happening. You don't know it, but every night you cried in silence was recorded as an unspoken prayer, an invisible surrender. You don't know it, but every injustice you suffered was writing a chapter of resistance in your soul. You don't know it, but every rejection was the chisel the Spirit used to carve in you the exact shape you needed. Hidden preparation isn't romantic. It's hard, it's lonely. It breaks pride, dismantles human expectations, and forces you to find meaning in God and God alone. You were trained to depend on his voice and not on the validation of men. Think of Joseph thrown into prison for an unjust accusation. Years passed, and it seemed God had forgotten. But what no one saw was that that cell was a school. It was there that he learned to manage resources, to deal with difficult people, to maintain hope amidst oblivion. It was there, far from the eyes of the world, that God prepared the administrator of Egypt, the man who would save nations from famine. You too have been in invisible prisons, perhaps the cell of unemployment, perhaps the cell of family misunderstanding, perhaps the cell of loneliness when no one believed in you. But it wasn't just any prison, it was a place of training. And like Joseph, you didn't realize you were learning skills that only flourish in arid land. Heaven shows me that what seemed like delay was alignment. What seemed like loss was preparation for multiplication. What seemed like silence was God working in you. Look at David, forgotten in the field while his brothers were presented to Samuel. The prophet was there, and all eyes were on his sons who looked like kings. But the chosen one was hidden with the sheep, playing the harp in the silence of the night, facing lions and bears without an audience. No one saw, but heaven saw. And heaven recorded every battle, every song, every tear shed in the pasture. You too have stories from the field. Stories that no one applauded, struggles that no one acknowledged, tears that no one wiped away. And still, you overcame each night. Still, you got up the next day. Still, you believed when everything seemed to say it wasn't worth it. This is the weight of hidden preparation. God doesn't train you for the small. God doesn't waste pain. He only allows what will be used for something greater. And every mark, every scar, every silence will be a witness that you didn't build yourself, but were sculpted by the Spirit. There are things that only flourish in the darkness. Seeds don't germinate in the light. They need to be buried, crushed, pressed, until the breakthrough comes. And you, like a seed, were placed in deep soil. You were pressed, crushed, silenced, but all of this was part of the process of being born again. And when the right time comes, nothing can hold back the strength of a seed breaking through the earth. In the same way, nothing can hold you back when heaven says, now, because the time of hidden preparation doesn't last forever. It has a beginning and an end, and heaven has already decreed that the end of this cycle is near. You will understand that every closed door was actually redirecting you. You will realize that every lost friendship was protecting you. You will remember every dark night and see how they forged your resilience. What God is doing is not small. It is something that requires deep roots, and that is why the preparation was long, silent, almost unbearable. But now the roots are firm. Now you are ready to bear the weight of what is coming. The hidden preparation was not a punishment. It was a privilege. It was proof that God had something so great for you that it could not be built on sand. It needed to be built on rock. And the rock is Christ. And Christ is the voice that sustained you even when all sounds fell silent. Now take a deep breath. Feel within yourself the certainty that nothing was in vain. Every detail had a purpose. Every silence was a lesson. Every pain was an ingredient. And now, when the revelation comes, you will not only live the promise, but you will be living proof that God prepares in secret those he will exalt in public. I was prepared in silence, but now I will be revealed in power. My story does not end in the hidden. It blossoms on the stage that heaven has prepared for me. Há momento na vida em que o céu se inclina sobre a terra e com uma única ordem, muda capítulos inteiros da nossa história. Esse momento está chegando para você. O tempo da preparação oculta cumpriu o seu papel. Agora o Espírito sussurra. É hora de virar a página. Você carregou páginas pesadas, páginas de dor, de espera, de rejeição. Elas estavam manchadas de lágrimas, dobradas pelo peso das noites sem resposta. Mas nenhuma página define o livro inteiro. Nenhuma fase dolorosa é o capítulo final. E hoje, o céu declara, o enredo está mudando. Quando Deus decide virar a página, não há mão humana que possa impedir. Não é questão de sorte, não é coincidência, Não é acaso, é decreto, é decisão divina. É o autor da sua vida escrevendo um novo começo. Lembre-se, a página da cruz parecia ser o fim. Todos olharam para Jesus pendurado, sangrando, derrotado. O céu estava em silêncio e os inimigos riam. Mas aquela página não era o último capítulo. O terceiro dia virou a página. A ressurreição foi a resposta. E o que parecia derrota tornou-se o maior triunfo da eternidade. Da mesma forma, você olhou para fases da sua vida e pensou: acabou. Não tem mais saída. Não tem mais esperança. Mas o céu estava apenas esperando o terceiro dia da sua história. E agora essa estação chega. A página vai virar. Virar a página não significa que o passado será apagado. As memórias estarão lá. As cicatrizes continuarão no corpo e na alma. Mas agora elas não serão marcas de derrota, e sim testemunhos de superação. Você olhará para trás e verá não apenas o que sofreu, mas o quanto foi sustentado, o quanto cresceu, o quanto amadureceu, o quanto Deus esteve presente mesmo quando parecia ausente. Você já percebeu como os livros mais marcantes têm capítulos de tensão, de dor, de conflito? Se a história fosse apenas linear e tranquila, ninguém se lembraria dela. O que toca corações são as viradas inesperadas. E sua vida é exatamente isso. Um livro escrito para ser lembrado, contado, celebrado. O céu já preparou o próximo capítulo. Um capítulo onde portas se abrem, onde vozes que antes se calaram começam a reconhecer você, onde as sementes que foram plantadas em lágrimas começam a florescer em alegria. O virar da página traz um novo cenário, onde havia deserto, flores, onde havia silêncio, canções, onde havia dor, cura. Você precisa entender que esse virar não depende de você forçar. Não é sobre tentar manipular o tempo, acelerar processos, empurrar portas. O virar da página é obra exclusiva do autor. É ele que diz: basta. É ele que decide: agora. E quando ele fala, tudo obedece. Veja Jó. Ele perdeu tudo: família, saúde, bens, amigos. Ele foi reduzido ao pó, à cinza, ao silêncio. Mas houve um dia em que o céu disse: é suficiente. E a página virou. E no novo capítulo, Jó recebeu o dobro do que havia perdido. No novo capítulo, sua vida brilhou mais do que no começo. Assim será com você. A página do luto se tornará página de dança. A página da escassez se transformará em página de abundância. A página da vergonha será substituída pela honra. E todos verão que não foi obra humana, mas intervenção divina. Virar a página não significa que você nunca mais terá desafios, mas significa que você não estará mais preso ao mesmo ciclo. O que se repetia não se repetirá mais. O que te aprisionava não terá mais poder. O que te humilhava será cenário para a exaltação que vem do alto. Você já sentiu que lia a mesma parte da sua vida repetidamente, como se estivesse preso em um ciclo que não terminava? Agora, esse ciclo se encerra. O autor celestial já escreveu o ponto final daquele trecho. E está inaugurando um novo capítulo diante dos seus olhos. E sabe o que é mais forte? Você não precisará anunciar isso. Não precisará provar para ninguém que a página virou. As pessoas vão perceber. Elas vão olhar para você e dirão: algo mudou. E você saberá que foi o céu quem mudou. Prepare-se para caminhar em um novo terreno. Prepare-se para respirar novos ares. Prepare-se para carregar novas responsabilidades. Porque quando o céu vira a página, não é apenas para te dar alívio, mas para te conduzir ao propósito pelo qual você foi moldado no oculto. Você não está apenas começando um novo capítulo. Você está começando a parte mais importante da sua jornada. Aquela que fará sentido de tudo o que você viveu. Aquela que mostrará que nenhuma dor foi desperdiçada. aquela que confirmará que Deus nunca erra. Afirmação profética para encerrar o capítulo. O céu virou a página da minha vida. O que era dor se torna testemunho. O que era silêncio se torna canção. Este é o início de um novo capítulo escrito pelas mãos do Autor Eterno. You didn't get here by chance. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't luck. It wasn't the work of men. Everything you've been through, every silence, every rejection, every hidden tear, was a preparation for this moment, the revelation of your true identity. For so long they tried to define you with labels. They called you weak. They called you strange. They said you were exaggerated, too intense, too deep. And trying to fit into small spaces, you almost believed them. You almost convinced yourself you were smaller than you really are. But heaven never saw you as they saw you. God was never confused about who you are. While they looked at your flaws, He looked at your purpose. While they judged the external, He saw the internal. While they tried to reduce you, He was silently expanding you. Now the Spirit whispers, your true identity is being revealed. The time for disguise is over. The time for living with imposed masks is over. You no longer need to hide. You no longer need to apologize for the intensity of the light you carry. Look at Moses. For years, he believed he was just a fugitive, a shepherd in the desert. But before the burning bush, the sky revealed his true identity. Liberator, prophet, voice of God for a generation. He was never the same after that revelation. So it will be with you. You thought you were just a survivor. You thought you were just someone trying to resist. But the sky is showing you. You are a bearer of authority. You are a prophetic voice. You are a channel of revelation. You carry something that cannot be silenced. The revelation of identity does not happen in applause. It happens in silence. It was in the desert that Moses heard his true voice. It was in prison that Joseph understood his mission. It was in exile that David discovered his royalty. And it was in hiding that you began to discover who you truly are. You are not what they said about you. It's not the nicknames they gave you. It's not the criticisms they repeated until they wounded your soul. You are who heaven declares you to be. And now that voice rises within you, shattering every lie that tried to imprison your identity. Do you know why it was so painful not to be understood? Because your identity never fit into common measurements. What you carry is not to be explained in simple words. It is spiritual. It is greater than logic. It is something that even you needed time to accept. But see, what once seemed like a burden now reveals itself as a distinctive feature. What seemed like weakness now reveals itself as strength. What seemed excessive now manifests itself as spiritual sensitivity. You were not too much. You were exactly what you needed to be to carry the identity God designed in you. Here is the revelation. You are not just someone trying to survive life. You are someone called to transform environments. Your presence is disturbing because it carries spiritual weight. Your voice moves because it carries authority. Your gaze reaches because it sees beyond the natural. Remember Jesus. At the Jordan, the heavens opened and the Father's voice declared, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." Before miracles, before sermons, before the cross, identity was revealed. And this is what happens to you now. Before great deeds, heaven confirms who you are. Perhaps you are still in the desert. Perhaps circumstances have not yet changed. But the revelation of identity does not depend on the environment. It depends on divine decree. And this decree has already been released. You are a child. You are loved. You are charged with destiny. Therefore, no longer accept living small. No longer accept shrinking yourself to fit into shallow spaces. No longer accept trying to convince those who do not have spiritual eyes to see. Your identity is not in human hands. It is engraved in the hands of the Eternal. Yes, you were rejected, but the rejection was only proof that your identity was not ordinary. You were silenced, but the silence was only the space where your voice grew stronger. You were forgotten, but oblivion was only the waiting room before the revelation. And now heaven proclaims, the time has come for you to see yourself as God has always seen you, not as a defeated person, not as a victim, but as a bearer of purpose, as a light that cannot be hidden, as a living letter that the world needs to read. I am who God says I am. No rejection can erase it, no lie can steal it. My identity is being revealed, and no one can stop me. Hey, God's chosen one. You know all too well the weight of trying alone. You know what it's like to fight with all your might and still feel like nothing moves. You know what it's like to pray in tears and seemingly see no answer. But there comes a point in the journey when heaven rises and decides to intervene. And when that happens, no human resistance, no opposing spiritual force, no wall remains standing. Until now, you've faced deserts. Until now, you've endured rejection. Until now, you've walked through closed doors. But the time of waiting wasn't carelessness. It was divine strategy. Because there are times when God allows the process, but there are others when He manifests Himself with power to show that He is the one who rules all things. Think of the Red Sea. The people of Israel were surrounded. Behind, Pharaoh's army. In front, the impassable sea. There was no way out. Logic said it was the end. But at that point, heaven intervened. The waters parted. And the impossible happened before everyone's eyes. It was a public miracle, so that no one would doubt that God was with them. This is what is about to happen to you. You have found yourself in situations where there was no logical solution. Doors closed in every direction, promises that seemed too distant, strength exhausted. But that is precisely when heaven decides to act. God waited until everyone saw that you had no way out, so that, when the intervention came, no one could credit your strength or chance. Everyone will see that it was His hand. Everyone will recognize that it was not human ability, but divine intervention. Sometimes the wait isn't because God doesn't care. It's because He is preparing the perfect scenario for the intervention to be unquestionable, and maybe you haven't realized it yet. But the heavens have already moved in your favor. Battles are being won in silence. Chains are being broken unseen. Doors are unlocking as you pray. You are not forgotten. You are not ignored. Heaven cares about every detail, and when He intervenes, even lost time is restored. Even opportunities that seemed dead are resurrected. Even hardened hearts can be bent. Look at Daniel in the lion's den. The sentence seemed final. The atmosphere was death. But heaven's intervention changed destiny. The lions' mouths were closed, and the very den that should have been your tomb became a stage for deliverance. So it will be with you. What seemed like the end will be the place of testimony. What seemed like humiliation will become a platform for exaltation. What seemed like defeat will be turned into victory. But here's a secret. Heaven's intervention doesn't just happen to resolve your pain. It happens to reveal purpose. When God intervenes, it's not just to lighten the burden. It's to confirm your identity. It's to show that you have a mission. Therefore, don't despair when you reach your limit. Human limits are the starting point for divine movement. When you can't do it anymore, He can. When you see no way out, He has already designed a path. When you think it's over, He announces the beginning. Heaven's intervention has the power to change stories in an instant. A decree can fall to the ground. A sentence can be annulled. A door that has been locked for years can open in seconds. Because the key is not in the hands of men, it is in the hands of God. You don't need to force anything. You don't need to manipulate anything. You don't need to prove anything. The intervention will come because God has decided. And when He decides, there is no opposing power that can resist. Prepare yourself, because heaven has already risen in your favor. The time of silence is ending, and what once seemed like stagnation will become acceleration. Unexpected invitations will arrive. Unlikely paths will open. And even those who doubted will have to acknowledge, it was God. Do not fear. You will not lose. You will not be ashamed. You will not be forgotten. You will see the intervention. And it will come so clearly that even your enemies will have to admit the favor upon your life. Heaven has already decided in my favor. God's intervention is on its way. No force can stop what He has already decreed. There is a time for everything under heaven. A time to sow and a time to reap. A time for silence and a time to speak. A time to weep and a time to rejoice. And you are entering the time of change. You have gone through seasons of loss. You have walked through days of invisibility. You have endured nights of profound silence. But none of these phases were in vain. They were the womb where the change was being gestated. Many times you thought you were retreating. You thought you were being forgotten. But in truth, you were being repositioned. God was adjusting paths, removing excesses, strengthening roots. All of this so that, at the exact moment, the change would be visible. The change does not happen by human effort. It does not happen because someone decides to like you. It does not happen because society makes room. The change happens because heaven decreed it, and when heaven decrees it, nothing can stop it. Consider Joseph's life. In a single day, he went from prison to the palace. Years of pain, rejection, and oblivion were reversed in an instant. This is the power of the turning point, changing destinies in the blink of an eye. And that is exactly what lies before you. Heaven has already prepared connections, opportunities, resources, and divine encounters. Everything that seemed blocked begins to move. Everything that seemed stagnant begins to flow. You are no longer in the season of waiting. You have entered the turning point. But understand, the turning point is not just external change. It begins within you. When your mindset transforms, the world around you begins to align. When you accept your true identity, the right doors are recognized. When you let go of fear, opportunities flow naturally. The turning point happens when you decide to no longer cling to what is past. When you no longer define your future by the wounds of yesterday. When you look to the sky and say, I believe the best is still ahead of me. And it is this attitude that attracts the new. Perhaps you still see some signs of resistance. Perhaps there are still voices trying to discredit your journey. But pay attention. They have no power to stop God's decree. The turning point has already been authorized in heaven. And when heaven authorizes it, the earth must align. Prepare yourself because you will see rapid changes. What took years to happen can be resolved in days. Opportunities that seem distant may knock on your door unexpectedly. What was a burden will become a platform. What was shame will become testimony. You are no longer at the same point you were. The process prepared you. The desert taught you. The silence strengthened you. And now, all of this converges on the time of the turning point. Don't be afraid to walk through new doors. Don't be afraid to embrace opportunities you never imagined. Don't be afraid to occupy spaces that previously didn't fit you, because now you are ready. Now you carry the maturity that the turning point demands. The turning point is heaven's announcement that the season of pain is over. It is the sign that the promise begins to manifest. It is the confirmation that your faithfulness has not been forgotten. God saw every tear, and every tear now becomes a harvest. You will not just survive, you will thrive. You will not just endure, you will flourish. You will not just go unnoticed, you will be seen, remembered, called, positioned. And when the turning point happens, and it has already begun, even you will be surprised by its speed. Because it is not the work of man, it is the work of heaven. And when heaven decides to turn the page, history accelerates. I am in the time of change. Nothing can stop what heaven has already decreed. My life enters a new season, and I will flourish in everything God has prepared for me. Have you ever noticed how, at certain moments, something happens that has no logical explanation? Doors open without you even knocking. People remember you without you having made an effort to be remembered. Opportunities arise in situations where you would never have considered them. This is the movement of unexpected favor. Favor does not follow the metrics of human justice. It does not depend on resume, connections, or status. Favor comes from above, like a rain no one can predict. It is divine intervention that places you in places you would never have reached on your own. For a long time, you were trained in silence. You learned to deal with rejection. You carried the pain of not being seen. But none of it was in vain. It was God hiding you, because the favor could not be activated before its time. Now the time has come, and when the time of favor arrives, no closed door can resist. No wall can remain standing. There is no contrary word that has the power to cancel the decree of heaven. Because favor does not ask for permission. Favor does not follow human protocols. Favor creates paths where none exist. Consider the story of Esther, a young orphan with no social standing, no influence, no surname. And yet, she was chosen to be queen. This was no coincidence. It was God's unexpected favor, placing her exactly where she needed to be. In the same way, favor is coming into your life. Situations that seemed unlikely will align. People who never imagined supporting you will become instruments of divine providence. Resources that were distant will begin to draw near, and you will understand. It is not by merit, it is by grace. Unexpected favor is always surprising. It arrives when you least expect it. It happens in unlikely settings. It manifests itself in details that seem small, but change everything. It is like a key that opens a door you never knew existed. You may have been forgotten by many, but not by heaven. And heaven doesn't need a vote to approve your ascension. When heaven decides to favor you, even those who opposed it will have to acknowledge it. Because favor makes visible what was hidden, and no one can deny God's hand on your life. Maybe you tried to force doors in the past. Maybe you sought human recognition. Maybe you wore yourself out trying to be accepted. But now, it won't be by the strength of your arm. It will be by the power of unexpected favor. And that will change everything. Favor will reposition your voice. It will give you access to strategic places. It will connect the right people with your purpose. It will bring you honor in territories where you once felt shame. Because favor doesn't just open doors, it changes stories. But remember, favor isn't just for you. It is so that through your life, others may be reached. Favor has a purpose. And when you understand this, the favor multiplies. This is the time when the improbable will become real. The time when what was inaccessible will become available. The time when what seemed distant will be placed in your hands. Not by your strength, but by grace that cannot be explained. And when this happens, you will have no doubt. It wasn't luck. It wasn't chance. It was heaven's unexpected favor upon you. I receive God's unexpected favor. Doors open, opportunities arise, divine connections find me. It's not by merit, it's by grace, and heaven has already decreed this new season upon me. You've walked through deserts. You've carried burdens no one saw. You've endured rejections that hurt deeply. You've walked in silence when everything inside you wanted to scream. But all of this had a purpose, to reveal your true identity. Identity isn't built on applause. It's born in secrecy, in confrontation, in pain. It's in the desert that you discover who you truly are. It's in rejection that you understand that you don't live by human approval. It's in solitude that you learn to hear the voice of heaven. For a long time, you believed the narratives they created about you. They told you you weren't capable, that you would never be remembered, that your voice carried no weight. And after listening so much, you began to believe them. But today, heaven tears away the veil of lies to restore the truth about who you are. You are not the label they placed on you. You are not the mistake you made. You are not the rejection you faced. You are what heaven decreed from the beginning, chosen by God, set apart to live what no one can steal. When you understand your identity, the weight of comparison falls. You don't need to compete for space. You don't need to prove anything to anyone, because who you are was already defined before you were even born. And no one can erase what heaven has written. Identity is the key that opens doors. When you see yourself as God sees you, no scenario can limit you. The correct identity releases courage, releases confidence, releases clarity to discern where you belong. Look at Moses. He had to be led out of Egypt to discover he wasn't just a fugitive, he was the liberator of a nation. Look at David, called just a shepherd, but revealed as King of Israel. Heaven always guards your true identity until the right moment to reveal it. And that moment has come for you. Everything that has been hidden will be exposed. Everything that has been distorted will be corrected. Everything that has been forgotten will be remembered. For now, heaven breathes upon you the revelation of your true identity. No longer wear masks to be accepted. Don't lower your voice to fit into small spaces. Don't hide your light to avoid disturbing others. You were not called to hide, but to shine. Not in pride, but in purpose. The revelation of identity brings freedom. Freedom to say no to what doesn't correspond to your calling. Freedom to move toward what heaven has already determined. Freedom to rest, knowing that you don't need to fight for something that is already yours. This identity cannot be stolen. It cannot be negotiated. It cannot be diminished by rejection or criticism. It is eternal because it was written by God Himself. Perhaps you have often asked yourself, who am I? Today, heaven answers, you are a son, you are chosen, you are heir to the promise, you are a voice for this generation, you are light in the midst of darkness. And when this truth sinks into the depths of your heart, everything will change. Because no one can manipulate you through doubt. No one can control you through fear. No one can limit you through rejection. The revelation of identity is your liberation. From now on, you no longer walk hunched over. You walk tall because you know who you are. You no longer speak insecurely. You speak with authority because your voice carries destiny. You no longer walk lost. You walk aligned because your identity is a compass. And remember, identity is not just who you are, but what you carry. You carry fire. You carry light. You carry authority. You carry grace. And nothing can erase that seal. My true identity has been revealed. I am not the label of pain, nor the mark of rejection. I am a child of heaven, chosen to live eternal promises. Nothing can erase what God has written about me. Crossing the desert wasn't easy. Carrying the weight of silence was painful. Facing rejection seemed unbearable. But all of this wasn't the end of your story. It was just the path to victory. Victory doesn't begin when others recognize you. It begins when you recognize what heaven has already decreed for your life. And today, the decree is clear. You won. You won the nights you cried without anyone noticing. You won the days you almost gave up. You won every word they tried to use to drown out your voice. You won because you remained. And those who remain always reap victory. Victory isn't just an external result, it's an internal attitude. It's looking back and realizing nothing was in vain. Every tear became a seed. Every wound became a testimony. Every silence became a strength. Now, you enter the harvest phase. Everything that seemed lost begins to fall into place. Everything that seemed dead blossoms again. Everything that seemed forgotten rises with renewed strength. Because victory is heaven's seal saying, I have always been with you. See how heaven acts. Joseph won not when he left prison, but when he remained faithful amid injustice. David won not only on the throne, but when he remained trusting in the desert. Jesus won not only in the resurrection, but on the cross, when he declared, it is finished. Victory always begins in the invisible before it becomes visible, and you have already won. Before human eyes perceive it, heaven has already written it. Before men recognize it, the decree has already been given. Victory is your inheritance, your identity, your destiny. Now is the time to proclaim it. No longer to wait in silence, but to raise your voice. Say with authority, I am victorious in Christ. Declare, nothing can stop me. Proclaim, the promise is real, and I will live all that heaven has in store for me. Proclaiming victory is more than words. It's aligning your voice with what heaven has already declared. It's rejecting narratives of failure. It's banishing thoughts of defeat. It's affirming, every day, I am more than a conqueror. And when you proclaim, the environment responds. Circumstances begin to align. Doors begin to open. Hearts begin to be touched. Because proclamation activates in the natural what already exists in the spiritual. You are not someone trying to win. You are someone who has already won. Not by your strength, but by God's faithfulness. Not by your merit, but by divine favor. Not by logic, but by grace. And this victory is not small. It doesn't just cover a detail of your life. It invades every area. It touches your home, your family, your future, your relationships, your voice, your mission. Victory is not partial, it is complete. So stand up, hold your head high, take your position, because heaven has already decreed, you are victorious. I proclaim my victory. I am not defeated. I am not forgotten. I am not erased. I am more than a conqueror. My life is a living testimony to God's faithfulness, and nothing can stop what has already been accomplished in heaven, God's chosen one. You didn't get here by chance. It wasn't luck. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't a mere fluke of the algorithm. It was purpose. Heaven led you to this message because there was something that needed to be activated within you. Along this path, we saw the silence, the rejection, the hidden tears, the unanswered questions. But we also saw the invisible hand of God sustaining you. We saw how each pain was transformation, how each loss was preparation, how each silence was polishing. Now, before you, is not just the end of a video. It is the beginning of a new season. A season marked by victory, by favor, by revelation. The time of darkness has passed. The time of waiting is over. Heaven declares, this is the moment of your manifestation. And here is the key. From now on, you no longer walk with the same identity. You no longer carry the weight of rejection. You no longer live under the label of oblivion. Your identity has been restored. Your voice has been returned. Your worth has been confirmed by God Himself. You are a chosen vessel. You are a victor forged in trials. You are a bearer of light in the midst of darkness. And the world will see this, not out of vanity, but because heaven itself has chosen to reveal it. So, take a deep breath right now. Feel the presence that surrounds you. It is the Spirit confirming that the journey was not in vain. It is heaven saying, I was with you all along. It is the future unfolding before your eyes. And I want you to hold this in your soul. You overcame. You endured. You were prepared. And now you will be lifted up in honor. Do not doubt. Do not question. Do not allow the voices of fear to erase what heaven has already decreed. Walk with authority. Declare boldly. Live with conviction. Because victory is your inheritance, the promise is your portion, and testimony will be your mark. If this message spoke to you, allow it to continue resonating. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And when you're ready, choose the next video that resonates with your soul. Because this journey doesn't end here. It's just the beginning of a deeper walk with God. Heaven has already decided. The time has come. Victory is yours. I am light. I am a trustworthy vessel. I am a victor. Heaven has raised me up, and no one can erase what God has chosen to reveal in me.